Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarotam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi stuve patanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam kartra sutrasya bhashyasya kramad vivaranasya cha. We are discussing two very important sutras which deal with the higher stages of concentration or samadhi in this chapter. So the 42nd sutra is the first one, and the 43rd is the second one. We deal with two levels of concentration. The first one is this. Tatra Shabdartha Jnana Vikalpehi Sankirna Savitarka Samadhi. So you find these terms used in the Yoga Sutra literature. The Samadhi is used. The meaning is just higher concentration. So it's sometimes used in the sense of samadhi as such. So what this particular kind of concentration? These are two technical subjects which can be clearly understood only against the background of a lot of other information. So after this I shall try to explain to you in the light of Swami Vivekananda's exposition. Because Swami Vivekananda explained in a way that was not a departure from tradition, following the tradition, but still a very freelance interpretation using the language of modern times. The meaning is simple this. So this first concentration is, it is a mixing up of word, and that word refers to the referent and the concept. It is called Savitarka-Samadhi. So you find three words are used here. Shabda, Artha and Jnana. These are three words used. They get mixed up. Shabda means a word that you use to call something, and Artha means the implication we get with the help of mind and senses of perception, and Jnana means our understanding, our response to this phenomenon. So this is simple meaning. Now I shall try to explain this, as I mentioned, in the light of Vivekananda's interpretation, because these two sutras are interrelated. So I shall try to explain this one. Now what happens when Shabda means sound, the word, the name, let us say cow is the name of an object, meaning when you first hear this, in what way your sense of perception responds. And again, what is the response from you? It's called knowledge. Now, when we go through a process of detachment, then at a higher level of concentration, it is not the highest, the penultimate state of concentration. The highest concentration is discussed in the next sutra, 43rd sutra. The subject, object and perception. Perception means how we respond to the name a cow in this context, and the implication that we develop when we listen to this word, and how we respond to that. The perception, a perception plus response, that should be understood in that context. That means sound, meaning, and the resulting knowledge or perception gets mixed up. This is a kind of higher concentration. Normally, these are independent. When you are able to focus on one of these to the exclusion of others, then it is a higher concentration. But it normally doesn't happen that way. You get a clear picture of this when we read the other sutras. Okay, now, through detachment or through non-identification with the variety of experiences that we go through, we reach a stage of inner poise, calmness, and tranquility. So all the disturbance or disturbing thought currents completely gone. Then what happens is we are able to understand a thing as a mixture of the word, what it implies, and the knowledge or a response to that. This is the first stage. Now listen to Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda says, sound here means vibration, meaning the nerve currents which conduct it, and knowledge reaction. So you find three words, Shabda, Artha, and Jnana. Shabda in Sanskrit, Shabda means word. That's the meaning of Shabda. So that Shabda need not mean a part of the dictionary or corpus. See, a child who doesn't know language listen to a sound system, and the child perceives certain things, though the child may not know the meaning of the sound. The sound really has no meaning, but the child associates something with that sound. This happens to animals also. So you find in some of Indian traditional ashramas with their number of cows, milking cows. So they play music, this flute, and cows give plenty of milk. This I have myself seen happening. Those who are interested can go to some of our ashrama, Haridwar, 100 of cows. I don't know how this happens. Again, if you find, say, there was a big, I'm just giving some very focused illustration to drive home the idea. There was a big natural calamity in India some years back, in Andaman Islands, and also it's an island formation, and also in the sea coastal areas. It was reported in newspapers that animals, not only animals, ants and insects, had slowly started moving, climbing to the top elevation of the particular geographical region. And so the only dead bodies that were found on the sea coast, there were no fish, only human beings. Now, how did these animals understood what was happening? They may have listened to some sound vibration. So that sound vibration meant something to them. So remember, when we use language, we have to use the word, its meaning, and our understanding of the meaning. So this is as far as language can go. But here we should understand, here the sound doesn't necessarily mean a word with a defined meaning in the dictionary. What it implies is the meaning. So anything which has implication, an external manifestation, that implication is a word. So all these should be understood to understand this meaning of this. See, very often when we listen to things, when we understand things, we find our thought and what we think or our perception of an object is inseparably linked to a word equivalent that we form in our mind. And that again is linked to a corresponding thought system. You may ask the question, you went to a zoo, you saw an animal, the name of which you don't know. Well, immediately in your mind, there are many ways. It may look some other animals you have seen. It's a kind of analogy. If it is totally different, your mind, well, it's an animal the like of which I have not seen any time in the past. That's another way. So there is always some kind of verbal response to the perception. You may ask the question, what about a person who can't speak? What about a person who can't hear? Let us say, God forbid. But suppose there is a person who can't speak. So his idea of language and verb, there is no way of really understanding it. But then when he sees something with his eyes, in his mind, there will be a thought system developing in response to that visual and recognition of an object. And he may have something that is inseparably linked to his thought process. So if you see an animal, you say, that's a kind of animal, I have not seen that. That's the language you use to refer to the animal. You saw a person with a long beard, he doesn't know his name, you explain to another person, your friend, I saw yesterday a man with a long beard. So the whole sentence is the word equivalent of your cognition or your seeing the person. So interpretation can be in one word, interpretation can be in a meaningless sound, as in the case of a baby. A baby doesn't speak in words, of course, so baby responds to that. So that's the language the baby uses. So language doesn't necessarily mean, a word Shabda here does not necessarily mean a clearly defined word. So you find the word Shabda in Sanskrit dictionary, the equivalent word. It's not word here. The Patanjali system goes far beyond grammar and language and philology and linguistics. So a sound, that's why Shabda means sound. Okay, and its meaning. So the sound is, here Vivekananda calls it vibration. I mean, the sound vibration falls on your eardrums. And meaning. The meaning is what it means to you. And what it means to you is determined by your visual, your sight of vision and mind together. That's what it means to you. Because your mind interprets what your eyes see. And for interpretation, the mind makes use of its previous memories, accumulated knowledge or ignorance, whatever may be. So vibration, meaning and nerve currents which conduct it. So meaning is nothing but the nerve current. That means, say, Artha is the word used. Artha again, it's the dictionary meaning is meaning. See, the meaning of a word. But here, Artha means Arthyade idi Artha, the Sanskrit etymology. See, what it implies or what it means. What it means need not necessarily have a dictionary meaning. What it means may not have a dictionary meaning. What it means to you may not have a dictionary meaning, a word, a dictionary equivalent or a philological equivalent. And knowledge. Knowledge is our reaction, our interpretation and reaction. Now, all the various meditations we have had so far, Patanjali calls Savitarka, meditation with question. That's what we'll understand slowly what it is. Later on, he gives higher and higher dhyanas, mean meditations. In these that are called with question, we keep the duality of subject and object. It results from the mixture of word, meaning, and knowledge. So, you will understand the full implication of this in the context of the next sutra. These are all interrelated. So, in Savitarka, question is the word, question. So, again, the translation is the best we can do, but the translation may not always do justice in philosophical literature. So here means the duality, the distinction between word and meaning, distinction between meaning and jnanam or response or perception, understanding, and the difference in between, that's all. Now, you may ask the question, how do you relate this to our everyday life? Well, to give an example, you may have heard of this intuition. Now, what is intuition? Intuition doesn't conflict logic, but intuition defies logic. Intuition goes beyond logic. Intuition cannot be in conflict with logic. Because logic, as we understand, is our method of interpretation of something at the empirical level. That's what logic actually implies. At least logic as we understand. So, a person who has reached this level of concentration will have the first step towards higher intuition. And he will reach the peak of his intuitive powers when he reaches the next kind of concentration that we are going to discuss in the 43rd Sutra. This is 42nd Sutra. So, and to give an example of intuition, there are people who can at one glance understand and decide things without going through the elaborate process of logical analysis, without trying to understand in the light of previous experiences. Often we interpret and we understand things in the light of our previous experiences. That's a background, that's a canvas against which we understand a new idea. A person who has reached the higher intuitive powers as a kind of a hotline, he understands things from a different perspective that's beyond logic. So their words and ideas may appear to be logical, but they are actually supralogical. It goes beyond logic. So that's the step, step towards we are evolving from the 42nd Sutra onwards. So sound here means vibration, meaning the nerve currents which conduct it, and knowledge reaction as we react to this meaning or the word. All the various meditations we have had so far, Patanjali calls Savitarka meditation with question. Later on, he gives higher and higher dhyanas. In this that are called with question, we keep the duality of subject and object, which results from the mixture of word, meaning, and knowledge, as I mentioned, The word, the Shabda, the meaning, what it implies to us, and then our own understanding, our own reaction to it, that is Jnana. These are separate at this level. So this duality exists. So it is called Savitarka, with Vitarka. There's a first external vibration, the word. This carried inward by the sense currents is the meaning. After that, there comes a reactionary wave in the chitta, which is knowledge, but a mixture of these three makes up what we call knowledge. So you will understand the full meaning the next sutra. First, the external vibration, that is a word. You hear a word, and this word is carried into your system by the sense of hearing, and the mind interprets, that's the meaning. And then how you pursue, you interpret, in what way you react to this word and meaning, that is knowledge, which takes place in the chitta. Chitta is the mental system. But a mixture of these three makes what we call knowledge. In all the meditations up to this, we get this mixture as objection meditation, and then next samadhi is higher. So we will go to the next samadhi. So the next sutra discussion will give a clearer picture of what we discussed so far. This is be understood, they are interlinked. how we evolve from word, meaning and intuition. Well, there are many in today's world who may think this intuition is some kind of a cock and bull story, some kind of occult, but it is not really. It happens even to people who have nothing at all to do with physics, philosophy, or spirituality. There are mechanics who have got intuitive knowledge of certain things which they do, some skills that go beyond the logical understanding. Very often when we want to know certain things, we may ask the question, where did you have your education? You may say, I have education, MIT or whatever, IIT or anything, you may say. That's why you are so good in this work. But there are people who are still better than these people. When Nobel laureate poet Tagore didn't go to university or to school, and he thanked God that he didn't go. So very often, normal education actually, it elevates the the mediocre people to a higher level. But it brings the geniuses to the mediocre level, to the level of mediocrity. So, because the inherent ability in the human mind, chittam as we call, to look beyond a mixture of word meaning and knowledge, that is Shabda, Artha, Jnana. There is an inherent capacity in all of us. That capacity is benumbed when you go to school. If Shakespeare had gone to university, he wouldn't know the way. And Dostoevsky, much greater example. So you think of these great people. They could write certain things, speak certain things, and not necessarily in spiritual level. I'm not talking about Buddha or Jesus or Shankara. I'm talking about people who demonstrated certain skills and what we call insights into human nature, which you can't peep into with a telescope or in a laboratory. So you have to look into yourself. And you have to visualize these characters. So when you read these classics written by people who had an intuitive understanding of human nature, sometimes you find your own friends. Sometimes you find yourself playing that role. You find that. Great classics. If you read, maybe he's writing about me. You find your neighbors. All portrayed in a great classical writing, creative writing, novels or stories. How are they able to do that? And many of them didn't go to university. So where did they get this insight into human nature? So it's called intuition. So intuition is not necessarily linked to spirituality or religion. Intuition can be found at different levels. But in spirituality, what happens? In yoga, what happens? You slowly, methodically, scientifically, you evolve step by step. And you reach this level of intuition. So what is the difference? I already mentioned earlier. When you reach this intuition level through the yogic practice, that means after being fully established in yamas and niyamas or important moral ethical principles, then you can sustain it with perfect mental sanity. Those who reach sometimes this kind of insight, without this background, frequently they could become aberrations. You find in their life something happens to them. On the one hand, writing a mighty book, Brothers of Karamazov, next moment, fully drunk. He doesn't know what it does. You find this happening. I can quote one verse from ancient Sanskrit sages, which gives you a clear picture of this. Yeppuman adimedhavi chaturnam ekamasnude apavitrova daridra paditopiva. This is the verse. Adimedhavi means a genius, what we call a person with insight. Insight means extraordinary skills, music, art, literature, and so on. Such a person will have one or two or three or four of these problems. What are the problems? He will have one of these problems. He may have. The verse doesn't say there is a chance that he may have. One is he could be poor. So you find great scientists, great philosophers, not modern university professors, excuse me, but those who really, you find such figures in the early part of Greek, the evolution of Greek thought, much less after Augustine and Aquinas. In the early Greek history, I'm talking in the context of Western philosophical tradition. You think of Thales or Socrates or Plato, Aristotle, Democritus, you find great men, great philosophers. So they were imbued in that. They didn't much care for money, wealth, or any of these things. Otherwise, Socrates would not have to drink poison, So he was sticking to his principle. So he was poor, and so you can find a great genius, no problem. Then another one is some kind of deviation. It could be alcoholism, drug addiction, or anything much worse. Or it could be that he may not have a regular married life. So, or it could be that he is short-lived. One of these problems are essential for those who reach a very high level of intellectual development. Is called insight. Now the question arises. The verse continues. It says, but suppose you reach this insight, the superhuman skill, through gradual scientific practice. First practice yama and niyama, and then asana. Not asana as in understood in Hada Yoga Pratipika or Geheranda Samhita, but asana as Patanjali defines it, sthira sukham asana. That's it. So, and pranayama pratyahara. Through this practice, if a person develops this kind of insight, then he can become a Buddha or a Christ or a Shankaracharya, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So that's the idea. They have the same insight, much higher insight, the ability to see things directly and look directly at certain things without going through the logical process of cause and effect analysis, as we normally understand. That's our modern empirical way of understanding and analyzing things. We want to know what it is, and we want to know what it consists of. We want a logical analysis. But any person who has an intuition, power of intuition, can straight away look at things. And it is unerring. It never be no mistake. People may think, it may not be, but he's looking at things from a higher perspective. So that's the subject of next sutra. The next sutra is very important and is very much more elaborate in Vivekananda's commentary. You find Swamiji wrote more elaborately on this 43rd sutra. Smriti Parishuddho Surupa Shunye Artha Nirbhasa Nirvitarka. This is the sutra. There are a few different versions of interpreting the sutra. Smriti Parishuddho. That means when you reach a very high level of Shabdartha Smaranam, means when your memory, your knowledge, accumulated reactions to knowledge reach a very high level of purity. A person who reaches the highest level of purity. So, Sarupa Shunye Sati, what happens, our mental system, mind loses its natural characteristics. What are the natural characteristics of mind? The word chitta is used here. The chitta is frequently compared to a lake or a bag full of vikrittis, impressions, memories of various types, or a lake with various levels of filth and dirt and mud on the higher level. So you can see the bottom of the lake. So that's one comparison. So what it says, when this chitta, which by its very natural characteristic, by its very inherent nature, is full of various thought currents, impressions, memory, impurities. Impurities, that means full of its natural characters, sankalpas and vikalpa, so to speak. Sankalpa, your mind looks at certain things and immediately a conflicting perception emerges. So vikalpa, it's opposite, a different understanding. So these vrittis, these impressions, these memories are going on, what we call stream consciousness, a stream of perceptions, thoughts and impressions. This is the natural characteristic of mind. So that's why, when you concentrate on breath in meditative techniques, what happens? You are trying to withdraw your mind from all external impressions. It's kind of pratyahara, as Patanjali calls it. Withdrawing the mind from external objects and trying to focus the mind on the breathing system. Not that breath itself will give you any special benefit. What happens? Mind is withdrawn from plurality, from varieties, from conflicting visual or audio images and impressions. And you try to focus it on the breath. So you feel peace of mind. Because when duality or conflicting thought currents subside, you feel freedom from conflict. When they increase, you feel conflict. So what is means Surupa Shunya means, Shunya means Surupa Shunya Sati. Sati Saptami is a grammatical term, it is seventh. So when you reach that level of Surupa Shunya, Surupa means its natural characteristic, natural tendencies, which is mind, its natural tendency is to be always in a state of perpetual conflicts. That tendency is gone, which means it becomes calm and quiet. So, Surupa Shunya Sati, Artha Nirbhasa Savitarka. What happens then? Then what you understand, the impressions, the knowledge, the meaning that comes from outside, that alone remains. This is the simple meaning of the sutra. Now I will try to explain this in the light of Vivekananda's interpretation. In other words, you have to keep in mind, in the previous sutra, the object of meditation is a mixture of Shabda, Artha, Jnanam. Word is meaning, and our response to it, that is knowledge. A mixture of these three. In the 43rd sutra, you are going beyond that. And that state, when your mind reaches, rather your mind ceases to be mind. Mind transcends its natural characteristics, which means it's no more mind. It is linked to, in Vedantic tradition, it's linked to Atman. That's what it means. Okay, now I will come to Vivekananda's interpretation, because Swami Vivekananda puts in these ancient ideas, he puts the language of the contemporary, the late 19th century language, intelligible to people of those times. So Swamiji says, the Samadhi called without questions, Nirvitarka. So we are in by question here, doesn't mean question. It means plurality, a duality that exists between word, its meaning, and our knowledge of it. That duality, that distinction, that plurality is the meaning of question here. So the word question is, because that's how it was translated. In those days, there was no better term available. When the memory is purified, that is, our whole mental system, which is full of memories and impressions, purified. What it means, it is gone. All vrittis are gone. Purification here means all vrittis gone. So all vrittis gone, what it actually means? When all the undesirable tendencies and vrittis are destroyed, then other vrittis get automatically destroyed. They cancel each other. I mentioned this earlier. And this works on the principles of modern psychology. Suppose a person, let's say a patient, displays some very undesirable tendencies, characteristics. Well, counseling and all that. But one way, from a yoga perspective, one way to help that person is to give him an opportunity to do good things, good deeds, good actions, good words, good thoughts, good associations. So, one modern psychology may not be able to see the invisible link between these two. So, Yoga Sutra tells you that if a person, even a patient, even in a neuropsychology, psychiatry, even a patient displays some undesirable characteristics, one way to help him is give him a chance to accumulate some good vrittis, good impressions, good samskaras, so that he will have some good memories to fall back upon. Good ideas, good associations. In the beginning it may take time, but it happens. So, what happens, the new positive vrittis, they weaken and eventually neutralize and cancel the vast accumulated storehouse of negative vrittis, negative samskaras. When you have a number of memories in your mind, both good and bad, frequently good memories will come to your rescue. But you have only negative memories, so that leads to, in pure psychiatry, it leads to suicidal syndromes, bipolar, conflict, extreme energy excitement, and a total depression. All this happens because mind is fragmented. Okay, now coming to the subject. So that's called, Surupa Shunya Iva. That is another Padaveda version, according to Vyasa and some other commentators. They have given even much more elaborate interpretation. So, now the subject. So when memory is purified, then only the meaning is remaining. It is by the practice of meditation of these three that we come to the state where these three do not mix. So, constant meditation will help you to go beyond this level of Shabdartha Jnana, means word, its meaning, and our knowledge coming together. You can go beyond that. What it implies will become eventually clear as we go through Vivekananda's words. We can get rid of them. We will first try to understand what these three are. So, Shabdartha Jnana means word, its meaning, and knowledge. So, word is a word that comes from outside. Let's say Vivekananda will explain. And how we understand its the meaning, and how we react to that meaning is knowledge. Okay. And if you want any proof for this, one of the major problems in modern world is the fragmentation of knowledge, informations, and ideas. So that means you sit in your home, you have a computer, all the dirt and the international storehouse of dirt and filth and mud can enter your heart. You need not go anywhere. So that's a big royal highway through which all these flowing wants into our mind. So that leads to fragmentation. After all, what knowledge implies, let's say one way. When you have a lot of information of different subjects, various subjects, without any interconnection, you try to organize those pieces of fragmented information, you call it knowledge. If you know how to understand, make proper use of that knowledge, it's called wisdom. So there are three levels of human understanding. Informations are neutral. Very often there can be undesirable pieces of information leading to fragmentation of mind, the mind being filled with vrittis of innumerable, countless vrittis. Vrittis belong to various types. This variety of vrittis what creates conflicts, There are people who are absolutely idiotic, totally evil, no problem. Problems are for others because they don't have conflicts. So, but normal human beings have a lot of good vrittis, a lot of bad vrittis. A lot of good tendencies, a lot of bad tendencies. The extremely good type are very few, and the extremely bad type are also very few. Both lowest and highest level, few. So people who are naturally evil have no conflict, actually. And who are naturally good also have no conflict. Conflict is between these. So what happens? At this level, fragmentations take place. So we'll first understand what these three are. Here is the chitta. You will always remember the simile of the mind stuff. That is, chitta is often translated into the English word mind stuff, to a lake. So chitta is, as I mentioned, is compared to a lake. And the vibration, the word, sound like a pulsation coming over it. So you throw a stone or something, that pulsation is like the word, the sound, Shabda. You have that calm lake in you, and I pronounce the word cow. It's an example, a very interesting example is given. So in the Sanskrit logic, and I go to them, so what makes a cow what it is, when it loses its properties, its characteristic, that it becomes its opposite. So everything is like that. So a thing, a substance, stands for its properties. So it's called Gotvam. So Vivekananda uses examples from some ancient classics. So the example, mind is like a lake. So chittam is the word used in yoga textbooks. And I pronounce a word cow. As soon as it enters through your ears, there's a wave produced in your chitta along with it. So this word cow enters through your ears, and there is a wave produced in your chitta. So that wave represents the idea of the cow, the form or the meaning as we call it. So when you hear a word, that word immediately represents a corresponding meaning to you. That meaning could be different from person to person, but not entirely different, but there may be similarities, there could also be dissimilarities. So as soon as it enters through your ears, so that wave represents the idea of the cow, the form or the meaning as we call it. The apparent cow that you know is really the wave in the mind stuff that comes as a reaction to the internal and external sound vibrations. So what do you understand by cow? The knowledge is nothing but your reaction to the meaning that you assume when you happen to hear the word cow. So that is your knowledge of cow. It's an example. With the sound, the wave dies away. It can never exist without a word. You may ask how it is when we only think of the cow and do not hear a word. So when you hear a word and you understand its meaning and you associate that meaning to something you already know, it becomes a knowledge. And then it doesn't mean anything for you. Okay, this is the explanation. You make that sound yourself. You are saying cow faintly in your mind, and with that comes a wave. There cannot be any wave without the impulse of a sound. That's a very important point, remember. Vak and Artha in Sanskrit. word and its meaning. So again, remember, word could mean kind of a sound equivalent, not necessarily word as such. Shabda means word in Sanskrit, means a sound equivalent. As I mentioned, Om is a word, but Om doesn't have a dictionary meaning, but Om is the essence of all meanings of everything in this world according to Vedanta philosophy. It implies the whole, the total existence, knowledge and bliss. That's a different matter. So a word need not necessarily mean a word, it could be a sound. There cannot be a wave without the impulse of the sound. And when it is not from outside, it's from inside. And when the sound dies, the wave dies. So they go together. Now the subject comes. What remains? The result of the reaction, that's knowledge. So you hear a sound. It means something to you. You respond to this meaning. And the response is now your knowledge. And you associate that knowledge with some other knowledge you already have with you. You link the one with the other and becomes knowledge. Okay. Now this is the normal human being. I talked about insight and wisdom. Insight or wisdom implies the ability to handle this knowledge. That is a simple, as far as possible, a simple understanding of it. Wisdom or insight here implies, in practical terms, apart from the yogic concept of higher concentration, but it means the ability to handle, to make proper use of what we know. That is called wisdom. This becomes natural for a person who practices meditation, because he is able to ascend himself, go beyond this mixture of Shabda Jnana, means word, its meaning, and a reaction or knowledge about it. He is able to transcend above all this. What it means, he is able to identify himself to be something that goes beyond all these empirical sound systems, all the meanings. He is able to interpret himself to be an all-pervading, transcendental, spiritual, divine reality. That's what Vedanta Yoga says. That's how you transcend the empirical. And when you transcend empirical, you are able to interpret the empirical, not from the empirical perspective, from a trans-empirical perspective, from a higher perspective of intuition. This ability to see into things is what makes a person of intuition. As I mentioned earlier, an artist can have it, a musician can have it, but when it is not supported by yamas and niyamas, then frequently it's just like a pendulum of a clock. It swings in one direction, it doesn't remain there, it also moves in the opposite direction. That's why great musicians, great artists, after writing wonderful things or composing wonderful things, had to drink and to forget themselves, they have to run away from themselves. They cannot withstand the terrible fall of their own mind, falling with a thud, hitting the rock bottom from the higher level of intuitive understanding, intuitive work, music, art, or whatever it is. So Vedanta says you have to slowly ascend and reach this level. Then there is no danger of falling down with a thud, hitting the rock bottom. That's the idea behind. Okay, we will continue this discussion. And there are a few announcements which I want to make after question answers. So now we can have interaction. You can ask the questions if you want. We have about 8-9 minutes. And remember, we will have no class till June the 1st, Friday, June the 1st. We will have no class because we will have the big program in Olima. We are making preparations for the Olima Memorial Day special program, May 26th to May 30th. So we will have retreat sessions involving devotees, spiritual seekers, discussing spiritual topics on And 28th, Monday, Memorial Day, we will have a very big interfaith program in Olema. I will read the announcements later after the Q&A. Thank you.
Yes, Swami Ji, you were talking about the Om being one with all. I think like in the Vedanta, I think it's the 14th Sutra, and they say one with all is being one with God. Be still and know that you're one with God.
14th Sutra, you mean Vyakarana, Grammar, Panini Sutras?
Yeah, it's kind of like in the Lord's Prayer that, be still and know that you're one with all.
Yes. You are referring to Panini Sutras, 14 Sutras?
Yes.
Thank you for asking such a profound question, It is one of the miracles of human genius. The whole grammatical system of Sanskrit language are built upon 14 words which defined the consonants, vowels, diphthongs, and different sound systems in Sanskrit. So it gives you a key, a clue for interpreting Panini. The real sutras of Panini is more than 4,000. So, Vriddhi, Ayon, it's Riluk, Ayong, Ayauch, what do you mean out of it? Nobody will understand anything. So, these are 14 sounds which Panini listened to. Panini heard from Shiva. A very interesting story. It is a very famous story how Panini happened to write these 14 sounds. You'll be surprised if you get the whole range of the classical literature and Sanskrit grammar, it could be hundreds of volumes. Okay. But all these volumes, can you imagine Webster? No, I'm not Webster, there are dictionaries. Panini doesn't deal with dictionaries. Panini deals with rules and regulations. They themselves constitute a few hundreds of volumes, the whole range of Sanskrit grammatical literature. They are all built upon 14 sound symbols. And these 14 sound symbols, unless you study from a teacher, in the context of Panini's Sutra, which is more than 4,000, they don't mean anything. They just tell you, they give a list of the vowel sounds and consonants of Sanskrit language. Okay? So, for example, Ayon. They are not together an. I mean Ayon. So this actually it contains a, e, u vowel sounds. So it is called an. This is how it's formed. What happened, Panini was a brilliant young man and he was studying grammar from his teacher. He was the most brilliant among the students. And eventually, after leaving the university, you know what university it was? It was University Takshashila, which is right now it is part of the Pakistani part of Punjab. It is Takshashila. It is it is a part of the Pakistani part of Punjab, where Panini was born. So it must have been around 1100 BC. There are two views, 1100 BC is one date, 900 BC is another date. He was a brilliant young man. He studied Sanskrit grammar. Eventually, he decided to marry and become an householder. So the marriage is fixed. And then at that time, a messenger came from his teacher, his guru. The messenger asked him to come to his teacher. Modern feminists should not revolt against this. What happened, he cancelled his marriage ceremonies and went straight to his guru. And that was the beginning of Sanskrit grammar. What happened, he told, from now onwards, you travel all over Indian subcontinent, today's Afghanistan, Pakistan, Burma, all included. And you find out different phonetical varieties, different types of pronunciations, different types of grammatical usages and patterns, and learn all of them and write a standardized version of Sanskrit grammar. Which he, how he do that? It's a very big task. And didn't go back to his home. And that is the end of his marriage ceremonies. And the rest of his lifetime, he dedicated his whole life to this. That's, if you want to know the mystery of how this miracle of Sanskrit captured imagination of great European Indologists, all the way from Rhodes, Keith, Wilkins, of course Max Muller and others. For 300 years, the European Indologists was mesmerized by this miracle of Sanskrit language. So you can see the mystery behind. This Panini went round all over Indian subcontinent, studied all this, and he wrote 4,000 sutras. 4,000 sutras means 4,000 piti statements. And the first sutra also you won't understand unless you from a teacher. Vruddhihi ad ait. Vruddhira is adeng gunaha. So all these are different sound formations in Sanskrit, which he wrote more than 4,000 sutras. Last sutra is a. So what do you make out of it? A. It only deals with. So what I mean to say, pardon, is eight chapters, each chapter 4 quarters, called padas. So this is called Ashtadhyayi, which means a book with 8 chapters, which were translated into innumerable languages, European languages, all the way from 18th century, later half of 18th century onwards. So this is what you're talking about. It's called Maheshwara Sutrani. Maheshwara Akatani Sutrani, Maheshwara Sutrani. He came from Shiva. He meditated and prayed to Shiva what to do, how to write this book. So Shiva appeared before him. That's a mythological story. So Shiva appeared, but I won't call it mythological. For your concession, I'm putting it. I don't want you to think that it is mythological. I would be happy if you think it is historical. So it happened, he meditated, and Shiva appeared, and Shiva appeared with this musical instrument called damaru, and he played 14 times on this damaru. The 14 sound symbols came out. It became 14 sutras. So it is called, that is the foundation of Sanskrit grammar. It is called Maheshwara Sutra, and it means sutras coming from Maheshwara, Shiva. Anyway, so thank you for asking this question, though it doesn't have directly much to do with, but I'd be happy if some of you ask these questions. It gives me a chance to give a glimpse of the vastness of this unique spiritual treasure. Okay, come on.
I was thinking of the symbol on the altar, and it has the unlimited waves around the...
Yeah.
And I was thinking that was, one with all, being all...
Om is the symbol of the totality of existence. Om is a symbol of totality of existence. Om is a combination of 3 sound systems, A, U, and Ma. A is pronounced with open, vocal cords open, Ma is closed, and U is in between. So all the human sound systems are exhausted in these 3 formations. So that is called A, U, Ma. It exhausts all that you can think of, all the totality of human knowledge and existence. So Om is a symbol of the totality of existence. Okay, so I think now I will read the announcements. Thank you. You should ask these challenging questions from some unknown, distant corners, and that may give me a chance to explain a few things interesting. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we will have what we consider to be the most important event of this year. That is, every year we have a interfaith program in Ulema retreats, and this year, as usual, we have the major program on 28th May. And 26th and 27th, Saturday and Sunday, we will have retreat programs in which devotees will participate and give talks, and also a few monks and nuns also. Okay, now as a few more details about the main program. We have 3 speakers here. One is Swami Tattwamayananda. He is the head of our center, Ramakrishna Vedanta Center in in Paris. And he'll be accompanied by 2 French musicians. You will find their names are mentioned here, Naren and Sharada, but they are all top European French musicians who are assumed Hindu-Indian names. They are all French, prominent French musicians. And then we will have another speaker, Barbara O'Brien. So she will speak on the subjects interfaith reflections on sympathy in religion and literature. And Swami Tattwamayananda from Paris will speak on the subject interfaith movement in Europe, progress and prospects. And Swami Tattwamayananda will speak on the spiritual foundation of interfaith movement. So please remember, you can take copies of these flyers from our lobby, and you can inform your friends. You find more details on our website. You can do RSVP, so you are most welcome. And the program begins at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and it will be over by around 5 o'clock in the evening. So we will have 3 presentations, and again in the afternoon we will have lunch will be provided to all those participants. All the devotees who are attending this program, all will be given, of course, we provided lunch, and we will have meditation, and also 3 hours of Q&A. So I think nobody will complain of not having enough time. So you can come and ask most challenging questions. And then we will have chanting, meditation, and other programs. And on 26th, Saturday, in the evening, there will be a musical presentation by these musicians in Olima Men Retreat House Hall. So please remember, you attend all these programs. Thank you.
No class on the 25th.
Yeah, no class. So I mentioned earlier, there will be no class on 25th May because of preparations for the Olima Memorial Day special program. The program begins on 26th Saturday and will be over by 30th. So the next class, next Yoga Sutra class will be on Friday, June the 1st at 7:30 p.m. Thank you.